Joined by Jim Owczarski, Milwaukee Bucks beat reporter for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. We are talking about a very rough Milwaukee Bucks team. My name is JR Radcliffe, also with the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. The Bucks are heading into a game as we record this against the Utah Jazz. They are 1-6. The Bucks are. The Jazz also very bad. One loss as well. This is a little bit of a steep decline for them as well. And whether or not the Bucks win that game, and honestly, I feel like the Bucks have to win that game. Like, it's stupid to say anything is really a must win. It's obviously not a must win, but it feels a little more urgent because the Bucks simply cannot win. So I'm going to start with we'll start with the Cavs games, the most recent losses, back-to-back setbacks against a very good Cleveland team. Both of those games are one possession. Now, it's a little bit on paper. The Bucks, it wasn't like it came down to a buzzer beater or anything like that, but that is a team that theoretically this team will be jockeying for position with over the course of the rest of this season. And if we are still to believe the Bucks are a playoff team, and we'll talk about that, this is a matchup you could see again. What do you take away from those games? Should Bucks fans be encouraged that even though they lost those games, they showed well against a team that ostensibly is now very much ahead of them in the East pecking order?
Yeah. So, JR, this is interesting. I think if the Bucks would have just paid attention in Chicago and with Brooklyn, and they were 3-0, and then you were like, oh, they were played well against the Celtics and lost without Khris Middleton. I get it. On the road, second night of a back-to-back. Oh, like Cavs continuity, Giannis, no Khris all the way. Like, you could talk yourself into a 3-4, even Memphis, honestly, a 3-4 start, 4-game losing streak without your best players, right? And be like, that makes sense. But obviously this is in the context of losing many games in a row and one win. And so, yes, you can look at the Cavs games and say those were the best games of the season to date. Donovan Mitchell hit a heck of a shot, right? Gary Trent Jr. played some really good defense at Fiserv Forum.
It did come down to a buzzer beater. I don't know why I said it didn't come down to a buzzer beater. The second game did, but the first game,
I thought you were talking about the second game.
Yeah, I did. But I kind of hand waved that whole Donovan Mitchell hit a crazy shot at the buzzer to win the game. Kind of hand waved that, didn't I? Oopsie.
Yeah. So, and then obviously they go to Cleveland and no Giannis, no Khris.
Right. The
last time Giannis was scratched before a game in Cleveland, they lost by 40 last year. And here they were with the bench unit, taking a lead in the fourth quarter. And honestly, JR, there was, Dame probably should have gotten 3 free throws in the last 8 seconds, but whatever. So I think yes, you could say there are things to be positive about, but to your bigger picture question of seeing the Cavs later, look, the Bucks are one of the worst teams in basketball. At some point, you are what your record is. They are one, as we record this, there's 3 teams that are as bad as they are: Philadelphia, Utah, and the Bucks. And the Cavs, as we record this, are 9-0. They have now a 7-game lead on the Bucks, if you count 6 in the loss column and a tiebreaker. Mm-hmm. The Celtics have a 5-game lead as we speak, maybe 6 after, this coming weekend. 1 or 2 seed are out. I mean, I understand there are 75 games left, JR, but, unless catastrophic things happen to those teams, which, it's sports, but that math seems too hard at this point. Because look, JR, if we do this in a month and a half and you're like, wow, the Bucks are 500, they're 16-16. That means they went 15-9, right? And you're feeling good about it because that's the trending in the right direction. So they're in a hole. So yeah, I think you can look ahead and say there are things to build off of with these good teams in the East. But they lost, and it is what it is. And they've right now, JR, you're looking at 3 seed on down, because all of that is still really tight together in a jumbled East.
Yeah, and you've talked before about how that's fine. 3 seed is fine. They won a title with a 3 seed. I still think even a 6 seed is fine. After that, I feel like you going through that play-in process, you know, there's a little travel involved depending on where you rank in the top 10. And I don't know, that starts to feel like a longer shot. I know Miami is a team that has gone from that all the way to the finals in the short existence of the play-in concept. So it just starts to feel a little troubled for a team that is, again, like, this is their shot, right? You know, they have mortgaged the future to be in this position, and this position is last place in the NBA, you know, with 1 win. That's crazy at this point to me. And that's, I mean, I really just can't explain it. Yes, Khris Middleton is out. Yes, I even buried the lead and didn't mention that Giannis wasn't even in that second Cavs game. Honestly, that second Cavs game, you know, when Liam Robbins is there in crunch time and AJ Green's hitting shots, pretty inspired performance, I think, when it's all said and done on the road. But then they also had a 7-point lead that they didn't hang on to. So I like, Doc Rivers is not a stupid coach. He's been around the block. He's very good at this. I know he's got things people don't like about him, but like, he's very good at this. They still have veterans on this team. Why do they suck, Jim? Why? I can't answer that question.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Look, and I can't, you know, JR, I mean, we joke off air with one another, like, you're the doomer, right? You could, our listeners, our readers could probably say I soft pedal a lot of stuff, you know, in terms of just the, oh, hey, wait, but like, they are what they are. Like, you know, they're 1-6, you know, and on defense, they're bottom third of the league. Offense, bottom third of the league. Like, they're not good right now. And we can extract positives and improvements, but they're just not a good team right now. And it's a good question. You know, I understand that the Khris thing isn't going to solve the defensive issues sort of in a way everyone would hope, meaning he's not a point of attack defender in the backcourt. Khris is, even though he's lost the step, like, Khris knows how to play defense. You know, he's 6'8". You know, he can help. Mainly, he can rebound. And I think that's a little underrated part of this. The Bucks have not been a good defensive rebounding team right now. Obviously, offensively, I mean, look, Dame and Giannis are tremendous right now, JR, right? Like 75 points in a couple of these games, 68 points in a couple of these games combined that they've lost. They could do well with someone who could make a shot. Like Gary Trent Jr. is shooting under 24% from three. Brook Lopez is under 30% from three. You know, they're just not making anything outside of the two best players. And look, not that Khris is some like 80% shooter, but like we've seen Khris Middleton enough. Like, he can get a bucket. And, you know, for as complimentary as I should be and that the bench deserves in that second game against Cleveland, up until that point, they've not been good.
Right.
It's been a disaster. Like Bobby Portis, so hot in the preseason and so cold ever since. He can't make anything. And so when Doc has had to stagger Dame and Giannis, because you got to have one of those guys on the court. You can't have an all bench unit at this point. They're just bleeding points, JR. There's no offense. And Khris matters. And again, I think this is why this is an example, JR, I think, of you're seeing the NBA move away from the big three, because when one of the three are hurt or two of the three are hurt, you're toast. I mean, Philadelphia's going through it right now with their big three.
Real similar thing, almost identical thing. To what
it's just like, I understand how Bucks fans feel about Khris, but I think every time he misses so many games, I feel like we're having this conversation, which is like how off they are when he's not there. And that's because that's the way this team has been constructed. Do they change that in the future? We'll see. But for right now, that's a big deal, JR. And yeah, like, I hate to just put it all on sort of the variance of shooting, but like Gary Trent Jr., JR, is a career 38% 3-point shooter. He's shooting 23%, 23. Right. That is horrific, and they're open. They're all open. They're all open. Brook is shooting 28%. And now Brook's threes, I think if there's a quibble, we could say he's a little deeper than he should be. I think Brook at this point in his career needs to be a guy whose toes are on the line. But, you know, he's at 28%. Terrible, you know. And then to Giannis's point of they're not really putting up enough threes in general, we can maybe argue with that. But, you know, Dame, one-off night in Memphis, he's 39%. AJ Green's doing his thing. Taurean Prince is doing his thing. DeLon Wright's really not playing, but when he does decide to shoot, he's made some of those. So their shooters aren't making anything. Pat Connaughton, 30%, even though his minutes are down, which is fine. He's still not making anything. So, you know, I hate to say variance has been part of this, JR, but I think in this losing streak, they have had the snowball of all the bad things, bad variance and bad shooting. Bobby's not shooting threes, but he's not making anything else. Khris has been hurt. Oh, now Giannis is hurt. And then, you know, they were on the wrong end of variance, JR. Like the Bulls and the Nets are going to be bad teams. When they beat the Bucks, they also beat everyone else. And we're like 3-1 and 4-2. Yeah, and now that's starting to come back the other way, right? And so, you know, they're not good, but they've also had sort of the bad luck of NBA basketball all mixed in with it.
Yeah. Okay, Khris and Giannis. Giannis missed that last game. Any updates on either one? I mean, Khris, we were joking about like, oh, he's going to be fine. Okay, he's going to be back at Christmas. Well, now Christmas is floating through my head. Like, I mean, it's the same messaging every day and there's no change. I don't know if you read between the lines on that.
So, well, let's start with Giannis. As we record this, questionable with an adductor strain. He did not look healthy in Cleveland, JR, at shoot around when we saw him sort of ambling around, noticeably limping, obviously ruled out. We don't get that same sort of viewing access at home. We don't see him. So, I mean, my gut is, JR, they've got 5 games in 7 days as we record this, 2 sets of back-to-backs. I mean, for as much as this team needs a win, I think you just got to let him heal. We just went through this at the end of last year, JR, where he clearly was playing through this calf strain, and then look what happened, and the season was over. I think you have to just lean on Dame and lean on Brook and Bobby and trust that some variance will come back and they can kind of make do. But what's worse is 1-11 worse than Giannis tearing a groin and being done for the season, because 1-11 might not get you to the 5 seed, but it could get you to the play-in. And whatever we think of that, JR, I think the Milwaukee Bucks healthy are still going to be a scary team, right? So that's the balance here. Now with Khris, I think all of us who cover the team, who have talked to Khris, I think to a degree, even the Bucks are surprised we're sitting here in early November, now creeping to mid-November, and Khris, there's still just nothing on him. Like he's playing 3-on-3s and 4-on-4, like whatever. Like that almost doesn't matter anymore. Like hearing that is, so what? He's been doing 3-on-3s, I think, for a month. You know, when we were in Memphis, JR, he's just frankly said, I feel good. There's been no setbacks, nothing that happened where all of a sudden I couldn't do anything for a week or two. He has insisted that. The team has insisted that. He's just like, I'm just not ready to play. And I don't know. You know, it is what it is. It's clearly hurting the team. But again, I mean, double ankle surgeries, JR. I don't. He's a basketball player. That's a big deal. And maybe the Bucks' optimism at the start of all of this was misplaced. Even if they were that optimistic, maybe saying so was the wrong thing to do. maybe they should have just said Khris is out indefinitely and will be reevaluated on November 1st. And it's a different conversation. But yeah, right now, JR, that's a total who knows. I really no clue on that.
Yeah. So Damian Lillard, like you mentioned, pretty good. I mean, pretty good. He's quite good. 27, more than 27 points a game, 39% from three. He's doing everything you'd want him to do offensively. And he had a tremendous second game against the Cavaliers. He was on fire. With what you've seen now, again, understanding that not everybody has been there this whole time, but we have seen Dame be pretty productive offensively in his time here. But he gets criticized for the defense. Do you still think, having seen this much basketball with the Bucks and Damian Lillard, that it can work where you've got Damian Lillard on the floor as defensively? Do you think it can work for this Bucks team? Because you are getting the offense that you sort of hoped you'd get to offset whatever defensive shortcomings you would have. But seeing this now in action for over a year, do you think there is still a pathway where that process can help this Bucks team be good enough defensively to win games and win playoff series?
Yeah, I think so, because we've seen it on a couple of occasions here this season. I think in Boston, JR, he played a really excellent defensive game. I think against Cleveland, he showed up and he's not shutting anybody down. You know what I mean? Like, let's not go that far. But I think in the construct of team defense, when he's into it, and when I say when he's into it, like I don't want to imply that he's doesn't want to play defense ever. I think there are, but we have seen, like in Brooklyn, for instance, it looked like he was just sort of out there, and maybe that was miscommunications. Maybe he thought they were doing things and they thought they were going to switch everything and they didn't. And, it just looked worse than it was. But, I asked him in Boston, I said, hey, like when you're playing a certain way defensively, there's a trickle down, and he acknowledged as much. So yeah, I think out of, 80 games or 75 games that he's going to play, there are going to be some where you're like, oh my goodness. And he's going to get targeted. He's 6'2", 6'3", whatever. He's clearly an offensive player, always has been. Yeah, so that's not going to change. But yeah, I think, JR, it'll be fine. It's just honestly, JR, it's a little bit like Giannis. Like Giannis hasn't been an all defensive team player in 2 years. He's not, even though they've sort of gone back to a Brook at the rim, Giannis. Like you're not really seeing Giannis cause chaos back there, in a way that maybe you did 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. Some of that's a function of age. Some of that's a function of what he's being asked to do or wants to do offensively. So I think, everybody's in that boat. But yeah, I think Dame, we're seeing the guy who he said we'd see, which is the guy who's in shape, right? The guy who can play 30 plus minutes. And when it's time to play defense, he can do things like the Mitchell. I'll go back to this. The Mitchell game winner, it clearly looked like they were going to try to screen and get a switch where Dame was on Mitchell, right? And off the ball, you saw Damian being pretty smart about it and understanding that may happen and just sort of positioning himself and moving himself off the ball in a way where his guy didn't just like shake loose maybe for a lob, but he also wasn't put in a bad position. Now, he said he was ready to defend Mitchell if need be, and that was probably true, but the end result was the proper defender was on Mitchell, Gary Trent Jr., and it almost worked out. So, like, he was clearly into it, right, and aware of what could happen or might happen. So, a long way to say, I think, if this all gets sorted out and they get together, crunch time, I think you'll see an effort from him that is acceptable, to win games.
Last question is about Bobby Portis. I say this at a weird time because he just came off a pretty good game. Statistically, led the team at 39 minutes, scored 21 points, 18 rebounds against Cleveland. That's very good on the surface. I don't know how much stock you put into individual plus minus. He is far and away the worst player on this team. And anecdotally, it feels like when he checks into the game, at least thus far this season, things have gone wrong. And obviously you mentioned some of that is the guy can't buy a shot right now. But even defensively, you know, Boston, there was a stretch. Cleveland, there was a stretch. It feels like something's wrong here. Something's not working or matching up. Do you see that? What would your concern level be with Bobby Portis right now?
Look, it's weird because I said like his preseason was
amazing.
Out, he was on fire. Like the guy couldn't miss, and that's, I mean, you know, that's not going to happen all year long. And unfortunately, it has totally cratered. You know, 28% from three, under 50% from the field, which is not great. You know, I know Bucks fans get frustrated because they see him run down to the block and post. And I think if there's any concern I have is that it's when Dame and Giannis are on the floor, Bobby should be the third option. And too often early, we've seen them try like waste shot clock to try to get him a post touch. And look, for as skilled as Bobby can be down there, dribbling for seconds and seconds, trying to find a spot is just not, that's not good basketball. Like it's not winning basketball for the Bucks. So, but again, I think if you know, I don't know. I mean, look, if the Bucks are going to go small, Bobby is the 4, Giannis is the 5. He's a scorer. He's not a great defender. So you need, like, if he's going to be a plus, it's because he's making baskets. And how do you do that? You know, Doc Rivers wants him as a scoring 6-man. Makes sense. He subs for Giannis, right? I think the issue for me, JR, is when he's with the other guys. Not that Dame and Giannis should hog the ball and not give it to him, but I think they need to be a little more efficient with how they set him up. Like his post touch has to be quick, right? Like it can't be waiting to get him something. It's either there or it isn't. And then you move to the next action. You know, he's a decent offensive rebounder, in my opinion. He's kind of got that, you know, he's not a big leaper, but his sort of tap in is pretty nice. He finds that. You know, he doesn't really shoot threes as much anymore like he did in the first couple years with the Bucks. He told me the other day, JR, I asked him about that. He's like, well, I'm just sort of react. Like, I'm not going to go out there and hunt threes if that's not the shot. But I kind of feel like if you're with Dame and Giannis, your space should be out there, right? Like a la Brook Lopez. So I think there's some things they can do, JR. I'm not overly concerned. Again, you look at track record, like he's been pretty consistent with the Bucks since he's been here. So I'll lean on that. I think they just need to maybe help him a little more with where he's getting it, how he's getting it. Because I think invariably he'll knock down those little 15-foot fades and you know, get some offensive rebounds and ideally make a few more threes.
All right, I did say that would be the last question, but I realized I didn't ask about Doc Rivers. I will contend that if the Bucks lose the rest of their games this year, Doc Rivers will still be head coach at the end of the season. That's how 0% I think it is that the Bucks even explore going in another direction. 3 coaches on the books right now, but then again, Jimmy Haslam was brought in with all this, you know, deep pockets to do whatever it takes. And if it doesn't involve the salary cap, he's maybe more equipped to do something like that. Is there any scenario where the Bucks investigate doing what they did last year with Adrian Griffin and move on if this continues on a downward spiral?
I mean, I'll have to say there's always a scenario. I mean, I'm sure people can pull up our old PFPs. You asked me about Adrian Griffin. I'm like, there's no way they're going to fire him. Look at it. He's like 10 games over 500. I gotta find when clearly the signs were there that there was disconnect and issues, right? But I guess to me, JR, I don't see it because the vibe is different, and not to get all ethereal, but there is a night and day difference in the locker room between the Bucks winning early with Griff and losing early with Doc. Like it's not, they were more stressed and tense last year with how things were going than this year. I do think that resonates from the coach on down. I think the stars obviously have a say in that also with how the locker room thing is, and Giannis and Dame, I think, are in better places because of Doc. And honestly, JR, like the whole theme of this year was continuity. Year 2 of Dame and Giannis. Year 1 of Dame with a full offseason and a training camp. Year 1 of Doc with a full staff and a full camp. That's the easy thing to forget. And the players have tried to remind us, and it's just, I know fans don't want to hear it, is this is Doc Rivers' first season. It's his first season with his full coaching staff. It's his first season running his own defense, his own offense. The continuity is Doc Rivers as a person and his messaging, not any systemic stuff. I mean, that was all of him just patchworking everything they had put in with Griffin. So to me, to just disrupt that again, I feel would be so counterproductive, so counterintuitive to what you're trying to do, what you hope to do. You know, you always entertain it because it's pro sports. You know, they have fired a bunch of coaches already and hired a bunch of coaches already, but it just seems like that would just run counter to everything they've tried to do this year, JR. So, you know, that's just that's where I have to put that.
He is Jim Owczarski. Find everything he has at jsonline.com, covering the Milwaukee Bucks. If you're listening to this on Thursday, you can you've got the latest update because the Bucks will have played again Thursday night against the Utah Jazz. A couple teams really needing a win. The Bucks really need that win. Ben Steele will be on the coverage for that one as well. So we will, you know, hopefully you find it there. We will chat with you again very soon. Ta-ta, everyone.